Big time rematch in our main event of UFC 268. Kamaru Usman taking on Colby Covington for the second time. As always, one half of your host and duo, Craig Allan. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allan FNP. With me to my left, to your right, Matt Allan on the respective socials at Matt Allan FNP. And Matt, I'm going to put a challenge out there to the fans of Fight Night Picks. We get 1,000 likes for this video on question mark kicks. I'll do something crazy.
That could be anything.
1,000 likes for this video, something crazy. And listen, I'll even make it a better challenge. If you're watching the individual video, I'll add those likes to the main card video, and then it's going to be double the crazy. Now, I haven't said what I'm going to do. It could be anything, but what I do know is crazy. Colby Covington's taking on Kamaru Usman. That fight's going to be insane. What are you thinking?
I'm really excited for this matchup, but I hate to hand it back off to you so quick, but I had this planned out from the beginning. Do you feel like the hype's been around here for the rematch compared to their first fight? Because I don't feel like there's been that much hype surrounding this main event and this pay-per-view that much this weekend. Maybe that's just a byproduct because we're just coming off of another pay-per-view and numbered event, but it just, to me, it doesn't seem like the hype's really there.
Well, and the weird thing about this one is the fact that Colby Covington's last win was just over a year ago, and for Kamaru Usman, his last win about 6 months ago when he knocked out Jorge Masvidal. And I gotta say, that's one of the most impressive knockouts I've ever seen in MMA, and I watch a lot of MMA. And that's insane. Why? Because everything I knew about Kamaru Usman, yeah, I had just seen the Gilbert Burns fight and it was great, whatever. This guy's a wrestler. And when things get tough, he wrestles. What did he do in that fight? He beat Jorge Masvidal at the thing that he's good at and knocked him out cold.
And it was, like, extremely impressive.
And then he knocked out his friend Gilbert Burns before that. And then he, on technicality, TKO, but he finished Colby Covington. And were the broken jaw pictures a bad Photoshop like Colby Covington's been saying? I don't know. But I do know that the finish is a TKO win on his record, and Covington's still talking about that, just like he talks to all you nerds and virgins out there on the internet. It's weird that every video he frames as a promo is to nerds and virgins. It's like he knows his target audience.
Like Alexander Volkanovski famously said when he was on stage with Colby Covington, though, there's nothing wrong with being a nerd and a virgin. And it was pretty funny, because what are you going to do? Talk bad about Alexander Volkanovski, one of the badder men of all time. This thing about Colby Covington, it feels like a lot of people, or at least from what I've heard, people just assume that he's made these massive gains since the first fight that he had with Kamaru Usman. And you can point somewhat to the Tyron Woodley matchup that he had shortly after their first fight, but the problem I have with putting a lot of stock into that is, are we giving Jake Paul the next UFC title shot? Because it is kind of funny that Colby Covington and Jake Paul do have the same last win.
The weirdest part about this whole thing is the fact that if you watch any of the promo or what I've seen lately, and I'm serious, I've watched some of it, you know, you might get a little tidbit of info here and there. Covington's performance against Woodley isn't accentuated at all, and that's really weird. Like, that was a good win. He looked amazing in that fight. Did Woodley look bad? A little bit's probably that, but Covington looked really good, so to his credit, that's a hugely important win over a guy. And Tyron Woodley, this is hard. This is like looking at BJ Penn today and going, that guy's running for governor. He was a bad UFC fighter. He's one of the best lightweights of all time. I mean, he won 2 belts before anybody else did it.
It was like me watching Derek Jeter the last, 5 years of his career, if we're all being really, really honest, okay? The first lot of them were amazing, and he was one of the best. But let's be honest, they kind of held on to him a little bit too long, and the glory wasn't really there the past few years.
Well, it's like with Tyron Woodley. At one point, This guy, when he's fighting Wonderboy, when he's beating Darren Till, this guy's on his way to being the next GSP, and then all of a sudden, the bottom falls out. He fights over with Triller, and, the rest is history. So we get a fight like this where both guys are good at the same things. Both guys can weaponize their cardio. They know that. I know that. You know that. We all know that. One guy fights at a pace where he normally turns it up. Oh, by the way, the other guy really does that. And if we're really, and again, you want to be honest with yourself, I was scoring that fight for Covington. I thought he was going to win it 3 rounds to 2 before he got finished. So, hey, that is what it is. But since that time, one guy's had 1 fight, one guy's had 2 fights, and I've learned a lot more about one than I have the other. And all of a sudden, Kamaru Usman goes to Elevation Fight Team, turns up his striking, becomes a little bit more polished, unleashes his power, doesn't necessarily rely on his wrestling, and now into a fight like this, I don't expect either guy to wrestle. Their first fight was one of the best fights I've seen. Usman Covington doesn't get the respect it deserves in that year. That's an amazing fight. And both of these guys are great. They're technical. And I think for Covington, he's talked about it since, the fact that I had to make the move from ATT. Again, I lost some friends. I lost some teammates. I lost this. I lost that. At the end of the day, he gets more personalized training. And we've seen that with certain fighters. It works out a lot better for them. Usman did the same thing and it worked out pretty good too. So
this is my question for you though. If you're a big star like Colby Covington, you probably do get personalized training in a place like American Top Team. I don't think Jorge Masvidal and Dustin Poirier just show up to ATT and train with everybody else.
That's it. Usman probably did at Sanford too, and he still made the move.
But my point is with Covington, he went from American Top Team to MMA Masters. And it's nothing against MMA Masters, but it's not like he's going from Sanford MMA to Elevation, two of the top tier gyms in the world that have a plethora of training partners. Just with Covington, it does feel like he took a slight step back with his training. And it feels like a lot of that had to do with his public persona and him trying to keep this fight put together. I feel like his skill set might almost be hurt because he's so good at marketing himself. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it is the truth. Like, Covington's admitted in the past that he's had weird relationships with a lot of the Brazilian fighters at American Top Team. And there's a lot of Brazilian fighters in American Top Team because of the way he's gone about his persona in the media. And I'm going to say this right now. I don't believe anything Colby Covington says when he puts on his whole shtick. Like,
no, he did that interview with Candace Owens and said it was all a shtick.
Yeah, like Colby Covington, if you've ever seen like fan videos and stuff, like when people go up to him and kids and stuff, he seems like a perfectly nice guy. Like, this is all for him to sell fights, and it has worked out up until this point. But that's the problem. It feels like his persona and just the fact that he is so polarizing overshadows the fact that he is a very skilled martial artist. And the problem Colby Covington is going to run into in this fight, and just this matchup in general, is that in 99% of matchups, he's going to have the better cardio and he's going to be the better wrestler. And his output on the feet is going to be enough to just sort of fix the striking holes that he does have. Because Colby Covington's not a top-tier striker. He definitely has top-tier output, but he doesn't throw many kicks. His hands aren't all that refined. Like, there's a few things you can pick apart on the feet. Kamaru Usman does a lot of those same things. The difference is he's tightened his striking up a lot more, and he has much more powerful strikes. So if he is able to land with similar volume, he just needs one of his shots to get through the guard of Covington, whereas Covington's going to need 5, 6, 7 punches to really hurt Usman. Now, I think Usman has a critical flaw in his game. I really do.
Bad knees.
No, he swings wild on the feet. Like, Jan Blachowicz, when he fought Glover Teixeira, right before it happened in our fight companion, I said, he's going to get caught with a left hand. And not like he did get caught with a left hand right behind, because he was throwing that wild uppercut every single time he was backing up. Kamaru Usman, when he's pressured, does panic a little bit and start weighing power shots very often. Now, normally when guys pressure him, that's going to initiate a clinch situation. It's not going to be a big deal. Kamaru Usman's the superior wrestler. But I do think we've seen enough sample size to show that if Usman ever does fight one of those one-punch knockout guys, he leaves himself open enough that they're going to have a chance. Even look at Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns has good but not great power for the weight division. He was able to hurt Usman when he threw one of those wild looping shots. So I think Usman's not unbeatable. I do think there's a very specific fighter out there who might be able to put something together and hurt him, but I just think when he's fighting these other well-rounded fighters, he's always going to have the X factor of that unnatural cardio and just that crazy knockout ability.
The odds for this one, the champion is a big favorite. Open to minus 225. He's a minus 306 right now for Covington, the former interim champion, and then they took it from him. Plus 190 to a plus 242. Matt, the total votes for this one on Tapology, not very close. 1,332 total votes, 82% Usman, 71% by knockout. 18% that have Covington, they're 67% by decision. And I mean, when I think about this fight, it really is a tricky one, because if you're Colby Covington, you've already been in this position before, you didn't come up on the winning end, and all he talks about is this fight. Like, yeah, he fought Tyron Woodley. Remember how they were supposed to fight time and time again? UFC 227, that was supposed to be the two of them. It ultimately did not end up happening. So then they got to go back. They got to make the fight again. And it's years down the road. Woodley really wasn't in a good spot at that point. And then we get the result that we get. But when I look at this one, I turn it on over to our community over on YouTube. You guys have the support. If you get over 1,000 likes, question mark kicks, I'm going to do something I don't often do. It's going to be a little bit of crazy, a double dose of crazy. I already said, so now I have to live up to my end of the bargain. It takes 1,000 likes. But The votes that we have over in the community tab for this main event, 69% have Usman to win, 31% have Covington, and over in that comment section, Bundle of Humble saying last fight was close with a broken jaw early. If there's a person who can beat Usman on decision or finish, it's Colby.
Not finish.
Should be a good fight or an upset. Fishburne is saying most of Colby's supporters are
sad to see, Chris.
Just get rid of that one. Let's go. Matt R is saying Twitter is going to melt if Colby somehow wins. NB saying Usman finishes, so on and so forth. Matt, there's got to be somebody out here that says something crazy. Jonathan Cesari is saying Usman, and it's not even close this time. Matt, I think I agree with Jonathan here.
It's just, okay, if they were, let's say they were power in their first fight, and Usman just had a minor edge, which was his punching power, and they were very similar, just the thing that separated them was the fact that when Usman lands clean, he can hurt you. I know for a fact Kamaru Usman has made massive improvements in his striking game. I can point to 2 separate championship caliber fights in which he has made those improvements. With Colby Covington, I think he's probably improved his striking. I'm sure he's made massive improvements, but it's really hard for me to point to any of his past performances, or at least his one performance which separates the 2 Usman fights, and say, wow, against Woodley, his hands looked really good. Like, his wrestling looked good in that fight, but I really doubt he's going to be able to go out there and out-wrestle a guy like Usman, so I do like Usman in this rematch. And I will say this is the last thing. The fact that we can finally say Kamaru Usman might take GSP's spot as the best welterweight of all time really means a lot. We are 2 Canadians who grew up watching TV and watching GSP on every commercial just try to sell us Gatorade and Sport Check apparel. This is finally a fighter that we can look at and say, wow, he has that like Hall of Fame, Mount Rushmore kind of GOAT ceiling almost. It's not something we often get to say.
Your number 1 pound for pound fighter right now is Kamaru
That's
Usman.
True.
As GSP's career went on, it was less finishing Pete Spratt, and it was more decisions and then close decisions. For Usman, he just put the foot on the gas pedal and started to get finishes. So both of us are nerds and virgins in this case. My wife knows that I'm not one of those things, but I am more one than I am the other. Just banging like rabbits, maybe. Who knows,
What are
Matt?
you doing, Chris?
Absolutely love this fight. Both of us going with the Nigerian Nightmare, Kamaru Usman, to get the win. On question mark kicks, there might be a proper double dose of craziness.
I was going to say, and if you guys watched the last Fight Companion over the weekend, we did say that the next Fight Companion may have a certain after dark quality to it. So if you're looking to have a fun time and watch the fights, make sure you check out the question mark kicks, which starts 2 hours before the prelims. And if that gets you excited enough for the fights, and maybe, hey, you're sick and tired of listening to the usual Joe Rogan, Daniel Cormier, John Anik, you want to switch it up a little bit, you want to watch the fights with the boys, make sure you check out the Fight Companion, which normally starts, 5 minutes before the main card?
5 minutes before the main card. You get that bell notification going. You know exactly when we're going live. I love this card and all of the content coming out this week with Fight Night picks that you're not going to want to miss, so keep it locked in. And as we always say, let's get into it.